What is up, everybody? Welcome to the God's Heart, Your Part podcast. I am so excited that you are tuning in. Thank you so much. A couple quick things before we get into it. First off, if there are any specific things you want to hear talked about on the podcast, would you let us know? Reach out to us on Instagram at God's Heart, Your Part podcast. If you'd also like access to exclusive content, we got that for you on our Patreon, so check that out. It'll be well worth your time. Without further ado, let's dive in and let's learn from today's episode together. Well, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the God's Heart, Your Part podcast. I'm so pumped for this episode. I have on today one of my favorite humans, and I don't say that lightly. I actually mean that. He is a cousin to me. He's technically a cousin-in-law, but he's also one of my closest friends, and I love him. He's amazing. He's an amazing man of God, incredible husband, and I'm so excited to have him on. If you'd help me welcome Lee to the podcast. What's up, Lee?
Hey, Brandon, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How's one of my favorite humans?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good. Thanks so much for hanging out for a little bit today and recording this. I'm really excited for everyone to get to know you. And so I said a little bit about you, but now that you're here, I'll just give people a little bit more insight that Lee is the sole reason why I am even mildly adventurous whenever it comes to nature and going outdoors. And it was about 5 years ago, and I'm sure Lee could talk a lot more about this, where I just had a conversation with Lee about wanting to get more into that. And he's super into hiking, camping, fishing, all the things. And he was like, come with me. And so we've been on a 5-year journey that we're about to end at the Grand Canyon, which was our big goal. And so that's just a little bit about Lee from my perspective. You also, there's so much more to you than that. But Lee, maybe provide everybody a little bit of a bigger picture. Who is Lee? Tell us about yourself.
Sure. I am a child of God. I am a husband to your cousin, Megan, who is the most wonderful human being in my life.
Yeah.
I work in software for the golf industry.
Yeah.
And I would say I'm a mediocre amateur endurance athlete in my free time.
Mediocre. Yeah, right. You're a pro.
If you knew what people out there did, I'm small peanuts compared to lots of people. But overall, just probably like outdoorsman would probably encapsulate most things. Explorer. Yeah. I think that's kind of the best place to land at is like I'm an explorer and an outdoorsman.
Yeah, that's so great. Whenever you say that, like, give us some examples. Like, what does that mean, and what type of things are you into?
Sure. Yeah. So, like, one big thing I'm into is fly fishing. So, I have a couple of trips I plan every year, either up to Erie or up north to trout fish specifically, or out west sometimes, depending on what the schedule looks like. But that's one of the main things that I like to do. And I'm also really into cycling. I'm one of those guys in the spandex out on the road that you see and probably hate whenever you're driving past them and trying to, you're late for a meeting or something. That's me on the side of the road. Yep. Just give me 3 feet. Yeah. Give me 3 feet, clearance there and we'll be good. We'll coexist. But yeah, more specifically in cycling, I've gotten more into like ultra endurance cycling, which would be hundreds of miles, whether that's in one day or over a span of days. So I do a lot of bike packing. So like living off of the bike for 4 to 5 to 6 days at a time, and kind of just pushing my limits there. And I'm really into backpacking. So, just putting everything you need to live on your back for anywhere from 1 to 5 or 6 days and just heading out into the wilderness. Yeah. Those are probably the 3 main things that I like to do whenever I get outside.
I love that. Tell people a little bit about our journey with adventure in nature.
Yeah. So you said like 5 years ago, which is 4 actually, because we trimmed it down. I'm like, why wait? You're ready to go. I've been training you well.
Yes, you have.
We were at your parents' house one day about 4 years ago, and we were talking about the Grand Canyon, I believe. You were kind of had like a little interest in that. And you said that you wanted to be a little bit more outdoorsy. So you said, how do I do that? And I said, how about we go backpacking and see if you like that? I'll just like throw you into the fire immediately. We'll just go live out backpack for a couple of days. So we went on a few backpacking trips over the past few years. I think you've had a couple good experiences. I think we've gotten ourselves into a little bit of trouble. Mostly your fault.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. Just a real quick sidebar is like one of my favorite things that's ever happened backpacking was we were getting into the tent, Brandon and I on our first trip. And Mr. Weatherman here was like, it's not going to rain. I'm looking at the sky right now. Not a cloud in the sky. I had downloaded all of the weather forecasts for the next 2 days. I said, it's going to really, really rain hard tonight. And he didn't believe me. So we took the rain fly off of the tent. So
only my half.
Well, yeah, only your half. Yeah, that's right. Thanks for reminding me because I was a smart one that kept it on my half. Because I didn't believe you. And in the middle of the night, I woke up to an absolute monsoon rain hitting us, and the water is just dripping into the tent all over Brandon. He's sleeping through it. I don't know how he's sleeping through it.
Straight through.
So I woke him up. I'm like, dude, we're getting soaked right now. I mean, you specifically are getting absolutely soaked. So we jumped out of the tent and we threw the rain fly back over top of it. And then in the morning, I think you realized you learned your lesson. I think to trust me a little bit more.
I learned my lesson. Always trust Lee. That's a slogan that I live by. Trust in Jesus and then trust in Lee from there.
Sure.
So, dude, we've had some good times, and we're gonna have another crazy adventure coming up in the fall. We're officially going to the Grand Canyon, which I'm so stoked about. We're hitting that goal. It's gonna be awesome. But Lee, what makes these different activities and trips and I mean, you plan out some pretty intensive, crazy outdoor things you're going to do. What makes you want to do that and prioritize those?
Yeah, I think that adventure as a whole is something that is missing a lot from society these days. We have the computers and TV and we live in concrete jungles, and I feel like we've lost a lot of what generations before us had lived in and survived in. So I think it's really important just to get out in the middle of nowhere, get some peace and quiet. You learn a lot about yourself. It's a great time to talk to God. That's what I found over the past few years is I can spend a lot of intentional and quiet, uninterrupted time praying out there, which has been huge for me. And it's a really cool way to kind of like learn other cultures too, just from traveling. It doesn't necessarily have to be out in the woods or up on the mountains. Just going to a different city or a different state and just eating their food, talking to the people. Not just going to Chick-fil-A or whatever, but like going to like a nice restaurant and really getting into the culture. So I think it's a lot of good things to come from just travel in general, and getting outside of your little bubble. That's just like your hometown.
Yeah, you mentioned it briefly, but how would you say nature helps you draw closer to God? I mean, you led into the conversation with, first, you are a child of God, right?
Sure.
So how does nature help you connect with God, the Father?
Yeah, so, I mean, first off, God's creation, right?
Yeah.
He created everything around us, so that you're being in that, and then we are also God's creation, so I think it's like a nice like sync up of the two. Yeah. To really, like I said before, have uninterrupted time, to really just observe the beauty of nature and what he put in front of us. And like I also said before, really good time to just talk to God. Every year I do a cycling fundraiser where I pick a charity or somebody to partner with, and whether it's me solo or some other people come along, sometimes we usually travel across the state. So back in 2021, I rode across Pennsylvania on Route 6, mostly like wilderness area. Yeah. And that was like the first time that I've ever spent a lot of really intentional time like praying and just listening and having like a true conversation with God. I mean, I've been going to Amplify for almost 10 years. That's our church. And I've been on a roller coaster ride of like a faith journey, I would say, over that amount of time, and even before that, and we can talk about that on maybe another episode. But recently, the past handful of years, past like 2 to 3 years, I've really dug down and got into my faith a lot more. And that trip specifically, I'd spent I'm on the bike for 6, 7, 8 hours a day just by myself out in nature, and it just gave me a lot of really good quality time to listen, to pray, to think about things in my life and ask God for guidance, and then asking for forgiveness for things that I've done. So I think that's a really good way to connect with God.
Wow. What a great answer. I love that. Yeah. You do these crazy wild rides. And also I think you did just give us a reason to have you back on again. And maybe we'll do a little testimony with Lee.
Yeah, we could definitely do that.
That could be really fun. But I mean, it's one of the things that I feel like you helped me see the most was the value of unplugging from, I mean, all the time we're immersed in technology and social media and texting and communication. And you took me to, what is it, Allegheny National Forest?
Yes.
And we went up there, and you did not tell me there was not going to be cell service. And so I freaked out for a second. And then you were like, Brandon, it's going to be fine, and you're going to be okay. And it's so recharging and rejuvenating to just disconnect, spend time in the beauty of God's creation. And also, like, I think there's something to what you said where in those contexts you can connect with God in a different way, but also there's something so powerful and so uniquely fun, like whenever we went together, because the conversations you can have with people when you're not distracted, when you're not worried about what do I have to do next or get to, and you can just get to know people. So I just feel like on a few different fronts, it's great for relationship building with God and relationship building with other people. And you said that all really, really well. So you do these big cycling events, and you've got one coming up in a couple weeks where you're going to go,
yeah,
across the state. How far is that?
Across the state, we're doing about 400 miles. It's going to be myself and Pastor Rob, our youth pastor. We are getting dropped off on like the Philadelphia, New Jersey border, and we're going to cycle back to church over, I think, 4 or 5 days. A couple big days up front, and then we have a couple of days that are shorter, but there's a lot of hills and a lot of climbing. But we're going to be we're going to be raising for Compassion International, who we're partnered with through church. So it'll be a really cool way to link up like what I do with something faith based. Super excited about that. So that's coming up here in the middle of June.
Middle of June. Wait, so that might be actually when this drops. So if you're listening to this, it might even be that Lee is out on the road right now, or preparing to go out on the road for this trip, which is crazy. But 400 miles on a bike. And what I know about you is you train for this. You have to train your endurance. You have to train to be able to accomplish something like that. And so I'm interested to hear your thoughts. How does that idea of, okay, I'm developing endurance for a race even correlate? And what are some of the tie-ins you see between that very practically outworked, but also your faith, the idea of endurance and faith and discipline and all of that? Like, let's dive into some of that.
Yeah, for sure. So we kind of talked about this prior to recording, and I wrote down a few things, and that would be getting started, it would be having discipline, and then having endurance. Those are kind of like the three like takeaways that I found over the years that I can link up, talk about cycling and talk about faith-based endurance. So we can definitely dive into that. So for like the getting started aspect of things, I have a few passages here. One of them is James 1:22. Yeah. It is be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. So, we hear the word a lot, or from my side of things, from like a cycling perspective, I see a lot of people having these adventures or doing these things, but we need to be doers of it. It's like, we just need to get started. Yeah. And a lot of people are scared to get started. You've talked about analysis paralysis on podcasts before. That's an awesome term. I feel like people are scared to fail. And I've struggled with this myself. I mean, I went on a few of these bikepacking trips that didn't work out well, and I had to quit, and I was really down on myself. But to me, I've learned over the years that failure is not failing at something. Failure is not even starting something. If you have some sort of dream or you have aspirations, if you don't even start, that's what I consider a failure. Wow. So whenever it comes to diving into your faith, it's like if you want to start reading the Bible, or you want to start praying and talking to God, if you don't start, it's never going to happen. Like you're not gonna go further on your journey, right? That would be failure. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's a huge thing, is just getting started and not being scared to get started. And another thing I think about too is comparison. I see a lot of cyclists and these endurance athletes, and they're going, this fast, or doing this many miles per day. And I'm a lot slower than that, but hey, at least I'm out there in the arena.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can look at the same thing, faith wise. You're at church on Sunday, or your youth group on a Thursday, or young adults, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, I can't believe how much they pray with conviction, and I wish I was as faithful as them in my walk with God, but everybody has to start somewhere. I've
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
I've learned that myself. I'm going to be 33 years old here very soon.
Yeah.
And I'm almost just getting started with it. I didn't grow up
Yeah.
specifically in church. I didn't grow up specifically around Christians my entire life. So this
Yeah.
is newer for me too.
Yeah.
And I feel like the more you compare yourself to people, the more that brings you down, and it doesn't let you want to get started. So I would say, just don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Seek guidance from people and ask for opinions and advice on how to draw closer to God, or to get into something like cycling or running. But ultimately it's up to you, and everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I love that. Our spiritual walk, it's not a competition, right?
Right.
With other people. It's so there's no need to compare and look and say, well, Lee is really strong in this area of his faith and I'm not, and so I suck. It's like, no, that's never the heart of God. The heart of God is like, okay, even if I notice, hey, Lee is really great in this area of his faith. Hey, Lee, can you help me get to where you're at? It's not a competition. It's not a comparison. It's hey, let's come together. Let's make each other better. And I think that's really beautiful. Hit a little bit more on the idea and unpack, because I know we've talked in other episodes, but I really want to know from your vantage point, analysis paralysis. You mentioned that briefly, but in this idea of getting started, like just taking the first step, how do you do that? How do you get out of your head and just take the step?
Yeah, it's something I've definitely struggled with, because I'm very much a data-driven person. I'm a project manager for my job, and I kind of apply a lot of the same principles to my life as far as like structured calendars, and I do so much research. And research can help you and it can hurt you.
Yeah.
And I feel like the more that you look into things without doing them, the more you're going to find a reason to say, oh, I can't do that, or I don't have the resources to do that, or maybe this is not for me, whenever it certainly could be. And if you want it to be, it can be.
Yeah.
So, an analysis paralysis, you've talked about it. It's like so much stuff is in front of you and it just freezes you up, and you're just like, I'm just going to bail. And you just never, try to succeed at a goal, or you don't, dive deeper into your faith, or serve, or do something like that and get out of your comfort zone. That's what the analysis paralysis is.
Yeah. And we can even make it practical with, you said serving, right? Mm-hmm. And your story, if you're willing to share a little bit about like that first step with youth men and just serving there years ago at this point, and how much you've grown from that, but it just took getting started, getting in the environment. And what did that look like?
Yeah, for sure. I think I was in kind of an analysis paralysis then with that too. You reached out to me, maybe, I don't know how many months it was, 6-7 months after you kind of took over the youth program at Amplify. And you were like, hey, let's get together and get some coffee. I want to talk to you about something. I'm like, cool. Like, I haven't seen Brandon in a little bit. Let's get together. And you rolled up on me in Starbucks, and you're like, hey, I want you to come serve at youth. And I'm like, what, dude? Like, that's not anywhere in the realm of things that like I would be capable of, or I should be doing. And you were like, no, like you would be awesome at it. It would be a really good opportunity for you too, to like grow your faith. And I'm like, I'll think about it. And then I finally, committed to doing it. And then I had, we had all these funny, happen chance things that got in the way of me coming. It was like week after week, something was happening. And I'm like, is this God telling me not to go? I don't know. So I'm like using that as an excuse to not come. And I'm more of an introverted person by nature anyway. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to really put my faith out there, for one, in front of people. I'm going to have to converse with people and really like steward people and talk. And that wasn't for me at the time. But I came, and it was fun. It was during COVID. It was kind of a weird time. 2020. So it's been about 4 years now. We had masks and maybe 6 or 7 kids in the room, but that was what it was. And I've been there for 4 years now in our youth program, doing mainly production. I've done some small group stuff like that before, and I helped set up and tear down. But over the past year or so, I've really gotten more into the community aspect of it, and actually wanting to step out and give more to the kids and give more to our leaders. And I think I've grown a lot in that way, where I prayed on it. I was like, if this is for me, God, then just let all my insecurities and my walls come down and let me just be in this.
Yeah.
And then maybe I can learn something and maybe people can learn something from me. And I think I'm definitely have been on that path recently, and it's been a really enriching experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. But it took that first step of, all right, I'm not going to overthink this. I'm just going to get started. I'm just going to
exactly
put myself out there. And so I think if you're listening to this, I mean, one takeaway point is really with your faith, and I guess really with anything, not to be stupid and to just run into every single thing, but also don't overthink. And at some point you just got to move and you just got to get started. And I love, Lee, what you said about failure is so good too. Do not be afraid of failure, because failure is not final, right? And failure is just a way to learn. And so, oh my gosh, that's so good. So step one is like, okay, just get started. Just take the step into it. And then from there, what are some thoughts you have to kind of build your faith and to continue walking in that? And what's that look like?
Sure. Yeah. I think the next step would be discipline. And here's from Proverbs 25:28. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. And then another one that I liked was Hebrews 12:11. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it.
Wow.
So, yeah. So to kind of think in terms of discipline, people think that you need to have discipline during your endeavor, which is completely true. Yeah. But I feel, and this is what I've learned over the years, is discipline is a choice. So before I'm even taking a step into doing one of these, cycling or backpacking events or diving into the word or serving, I need to make the choice before I even do that I'm going to have the discipline for it. I'm going to go in with a goal. I'm going to execute the goal no matter how long it takes. It could take me 2 months to train for something. It could take 2 years before I finally do this, or it could, something like that. Discipline is key. And it's saying tomorrow, whenever I get up, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to further push myself towards the goal. And it's doing that, making that choice day after day.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think, we see a lot in culture, the idea of like the overnight success, you know what I mean? And really, that is way more rare than we realize. I mean, most of those people, they're not overnight. It's because daily they discipline themselves to become really, really good at something. And I just think like faith is the same. I mean, tell me if you disagree, but faith is the same. If you want to really grow in your faith, and if you see somebody and you're like, oh my goodness, they have the type of faith that can move a mountain, not me, right? And you're like, I want to develop that. It's just simple disciplines. And I wonder, could you give any examples of some spiritual disciplines that people could deploy in their lives that might be so basic and elementary, but if they really do them, they'll see that growth in their faith?
Sure. Yeah, I think the number one thing that I found personally helpful that I would recommend for anybody is just time prioritization. Everybody's like, I'm too busy to do this. I'm too busy to do that. Yeah. And I'm super busy. I'm a really busy guy, but over the past year, whenever you prioritize your time and say, I'm not going to wake up in the morning and just scroll Instagram for 20 minutes. That's 20 minutes that you could be, reading. Yeah. I can't do this thing because of that. I don't like to accept that as like a valid excuse for anything anymore. And especially not for myself. Yeah. And one of the main things that I found is the best time to do anything is first thing in the morning. And if you can have the discipline to get up at 5 a.m. if you work at 6 or 6:30, if you get up at 5 a.m. instead of running out the door right at the last second or whatever, if you can take control of your mornings, that is quiet, peaceful time before the rest of your day happens. The rest of the day can take you in any direction, and you'll find a million reasons why you couldn't do what you wanted to do as the day goes on because things compile. Yeah. But if you can get up in the morning, and this was my routine for a long time throughout the winter, I'm still taking it into now, even though the ice bath isn't involved. But I got up first thing in the morning, got in the ice bath. I'm in there for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, and I would just pray the whole entire time I was in there. It was like immediate, like, okay, I'm doing something to benefit me. I'm connected to God at the same time.
Yeah.
And then I would get out, dry off, and I spent 30 minutes uninterrupted time journaling and just reading the Word. And and that was super beneficial for me to say, okay, the first thing I do in the morning before my workday gets started, or before something happens on the weekend, or we're traveling, whatever, I'm making it a priority to spend time with God. That is the biggest thing that I would say anybody should do, is just time prioritization.
Yeah. And that obviously can look different for different people, right? You don't have to do an ice bath.
No.
Because if you're like me, that might make you further from God, not closer. I'm just kidding. No, those are great. But that can look different, but there is something to those waking moments. This is a bunny trail, but we'll go down and then back up.
Let's go.
I started a new rhythm because just with the different things in life, where I did start getting up at like 5 a.m. every day. And there's some stuff that I know, okay, I just got to knock out before the day gets started. But a new role that I just started for myself, because I would get up at 5 and I'm like, okay, this is great, you're being successful. But I would find myself scrolling for the first 10 minutes, right? And not even necessarily because I was like, oh, that's wasted time, but more because I was like, oh, that's the foundation I'm laying for my day. And I just didn't like it. I started just no cell phone at all in the beginning of the day. And I wonder, have you ever, like in what you just said, like, have you ever done that? And the shift that I feel emotionally, spiritually, physically, like in every way, just by being intentional with what I absorb and make the foundation of my day, is like crazily, like,
yeah, for sure.
Wild.
Yeah. It's funny. I find myself going through ebbs and flows of that, where some weeks or some months I'm really good at just eliminating all the distractions and getting up, getting to it, and starting my day off like that. And then just this past couple of weeks, I've felt really burnt out from house projects we're working on, and just other things that are going on with life. And I've been scrolling when I'm laying in bed in the morning, and then I think about to myself, I'm like, man, I didn't need to see any of this morning. I could have started my day with just, getting up, making breakfast, or speaking with my wife and doing my routine sooner than later, instead of, letting what's on my phone or what's in the culture dictate the rest of my day. I think you said something about how it sets you up spiritually, to just be, in a better place of mind for throughout the rest of the day. And I think that's totally accurate, because you know how the internet is. It's like, okay, I'm scrolling, it's going to be someone's mad about politics. I'm comparing myself to this guy or girl that looks better than me or whatever. And it's like, if you're starting your day off with all that stuff, it's already feeding into a negative mindset. And I think that you won't, your interactions might be different. The way that you're praying might be different. The way that you're listening and talking to God might be different if it's if you're consumed by negative things already first thing in the morning. So and then it's so funny, because I was just saying to myself this morning, I'm like, all right, next week I'm back to it, I keep giving this advice, but I'm not perfect. So the reason why I like giving the advice is I've lived through everything I'm talking about right now, and I can say this is what works, this is what doesn't work. I'm not just giving you something that's never happened to me before.
100%. No, dude, that's so good. Taking control of that time to stay disciplined is like so key. Okay, so you had I think one more point you wanted to hit on, which so far it's like, okay, at some point you just got to get started, take that first step, and then you got to not just take one step, but make stepping a discipline, right? So every day you got to work in this, but then talk a little bit about how to make that successful over the long haul. And what does that look through peaks and valleys, highs and lows?
Sure, yeah, and then that would be talking about endurance, right? And that's kind of like what this all culminates into. So my couple of pieces of scripture for that are Hebrews 12:1. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us. I just heard that one recently, and I absolutely love that, because no matter who you are or where you're at in life, we're all running some sort of race, whether it's in our personal life versus our spiritual life. We're trying to get somewhere, we're trying to get ahead, we're trying to win the prize. So I really like that one a lot. And another one I like is James 1:12. it said, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." And that's something I've come to learn a lot recently, is especially from a faith-based perspective, or spirituality, this isn't like a thing you do for 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
It takes endurance. You're going to want to walk this for the rest of your life. And that's something that you need to really commit to. And whenever you make that decision, it's like, okay, we're in it. Not to say that it's not going to be hard. You're going to go through seasons where you're like, man, God, why is all this bad stuff happening to me? You're like, why are you doing this to me? And you question things. I've been through that myself. And then there's going to be times where you're, on top of a mountain and you're like, everything's going amazing. And, I feel super connected, and things are going super well. And that's going to happen over and over and over again throughout your entire life. And that's part of having the endurance to just keep trusting in the process of growing your spirituality. And with the cycling stuff, it's like, I might train for a year for something, and it's like, I don't want to do this stupid 15 or 20-minute ride. I'd rather be out, climbing all the hills on my bike and really just like pounding the pavement and all this stuff. But it's like, you need those smaller, easier days to build you for the harder days. And that's definitely what it's like believing in God and trusting in him, is, having that daily routine, that daily talk with him, the daily praying, and those small things build on top of each other over time, a super solid foundation.
Yeah. Man, that is so good. It's not just a one and done. It is going the long haul. And, it's funny. We're both married, and not to each other, if that was confusing. But we both are married to our wives. And in the vows, traditionally, what do you say? Like, for better, for worse, and sickness and in health. What you're really saying is, I'm here to endure through it all. And I think, man, that's so key with faith, because there will be moments as a Christian where you do feel Jesus, and it's tangible, and it's like, oh yeah, like God is here. And then there will be moments where you're like, where is God? Like, I don't feel him. Endurance is saying, for better, for worse, through it all, I'm locked into this. And so I think that's just very probably under talked about, but needs to be overemphasized because of that. Like, the value of enduring is just can't be overstated. Like, that's beautiful. So, Lee, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
That's a whole word. That's a whole message. What advice, as we wrap things up here, like what general advice, because this podcast mainly for young leaders, next gen leaders, up and coming. And honestly, I love everybody who's older who listens to. You're amazing. Lee, Aunt Janine, your mother-in-law, is one of the biggest fans of this. So Aunt Janine, we love you. We do. But for specifically like next gen up and coming leaders, what advice would you leave with them?
Yeah. So like specifically, especially this time of year right now, for the high schoolers and the college age leaders, you're going into the summertime. You're never going to have more time to do anything than you have right now. Right. So now is an amazing time, no matter how busy you think you are or whatever else. It's like, you don't have like a house and a full-time job and all these responsibilities and kids and all this kind of stuff. So like really soak in this time, these next couple summers that you have, and use it to get started. Use it to switch up your routine. Use it to figure out a different way to connect with God that maybe you haven't been doing if you feel like you've been lost. Use it as time to explore, try something new, whether it's, getting out in nature like we talked about earlier, maybe just a different hobby or craft. I think now's a really good time for our young leaders to figure out what they want to do, prioritize their time, and get started over the next handful of months. So that's definitely one thing. Another thing that I think I've come to learn is surround yourself with the right people and the right groups of people. So I wrote down, number one, a few people that are older than you. So those people you can seek wisdom and advice from. They've already walked through maybe a lot of things that you're about to walk through, whether it's like marriage or having kids or just maybe, depression or something like that. If you feel like you're stuck, older resources that you can trust are key.
Yeah.
And then the second group would be a handful of people that are around the same age as you. So now you're walking side by side with people in your community, lifting each other up, having intentional, fulfilling relationships, being there for one another. I think that's super important, is to have like the right friends and, the right amount of friends. I think people are really like obsessed with having like a huge friend group and doing all this fun stuff. But I think the older you get, the more I've realized, at least, is you'd rather trim that down to more meaningful relationships with people that you're like more, close with, and not just having surface level interactions. So that would be like my second group of people.
Yeah.
And my third and last would be a few people that are younger than you. I see this serving with our youth program. It's like, I love all of our kids, but there's definitely a few that I'm closer to, that I connect more with. And it's like, I can encourage their dreams, give them like a safe older resource to open up to, and give them advice and help them, walk through whatever, trials they're going through right now. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is, this is what Rob and Lee, our youth pastors, have kind of been drilling home to us lately, is we're building disciples too. Yeah. So it's really good to connect with the younger kids and, to have fun with them, but also to teach them the word and to build their faith, and then send them out into their schools and into the community as they get older, as disciples of Jesus, just like Jesus trained his disciples up and sent them out. So I think that's really important, is a few older people, a handful of friends that are the same age as you, and then a few younger people to steward and help spread the word. That would be another set of ideas and advice that I would give people. And then the last thing I would just leave people with is, I've been trying to do a lot more recently, is to just tell people you're proud of them, tell people that you love them, and tell people that you're praying for them. I think that a lot of times we do those things in our head. Yeah. I've been so guilty of this, especially like with Megan, my, in my romantic relationships with my wife. It's like, I'm always proud of her for everything that she does. I love her to death. Yeah. I pray for her, but I don't always tell her that. And that's part of like really good communication. So for young leaders, do that with your friends and your family and the people that you're leading, is just tell them that, speak it, voice it out. And because it makes people feel good. It makes people feel valued. And it makes you also want to hold on to what you're saying. Like if you're saying that you love them, that you're praying for them, then you're going to do it. Instead of just thinking about it and not doing it. It's like, I'm speaking this, so I'm going to have to do it.
Wow. Those are some good things. So, in those relationships are, man, so vital. I think that was the second point, right? The relationships up, people pouring into you, down, pouring into others, and then around you, walking the journey. Like, that's so great. And then, encourage people on all those levels too. Let those people know you love them all around, and that communication, man, that is great advice. Lee, the wisdom, you need to be a regular. I'm just going to say that. I don't know that I've said that yet. But wow. You need to come back, and we need to hear your testimony, your story a little bit more. And then maybe we'll even dive into, I would love to talk about like, how do you develop those relationships? Like get nitty gritty with it. I think that could be really cool, but thank you so much for today. And thank you so much for your time and for sharing, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Brandon. I was really looking forward to this. I hope that whoever's listening can get something out of it. And for anybody that I'm close with that's watching this, like, I'm just a phone call or a text away. And, if you ever need to talk about anything, I'm here for you.
Yeah. So amazing. Well, thanks so much again. And thanks everybody for watching and being a part. Let Lee know how much you love him. Share this with a friend if you think it'll be helpful. But we love you guys so much. We'll see you back here next time. Later.